What's the strangest punishment your parents ever gave you? When I was 10, Mum would take my NES games for a week. When I was 13, Mum would take my SNES games for a week. When I was 16, Mum would take my blank floppy disks for a week. I didn't explain the mistake to her until I moved out. Me and my sister were fighting after I tried to steal some of her chili fries and she stabbed me with a fork. Dad took us out back and tied us up face to face with a rope. Told us when you figure out how to work together you will be able to get out. I had to cut open tennis balls with pennies. I'm still not sure what that was about. I was innocent BTW. For some reason my parents allowed my brother and I to have a very basic bow and arrow which we were allowed to shoot at a cardboard box in the backyard. Capital I, being very young and very dumb, crawled into the box while my brother was firing. Parents were not pleased, and to demonstrate how dangerous what I had done was, they made me lay on the couch for the whole day and pretend I was in a hospital bed. If I cursed, my mom would make me go into the bathroom and say every curse I knew while looking in the mirror so I could see how ugly I made myself look while cursing. Well, I learned that if I wanted to curse with impunity all I had to do was say yes and get sent to the bathroom where I could say any curse I could think of, punishment free, for as long as I wanted. Lol. I would get grounded to the front porch because when I was grounded in my room I would entertain myself with literally anything, even lint from the carpet. So my dad finally had enough and made me sit on the front porch and I wasn't allowed to talk to anyone except to say that I'm grounded and can't talk. My parents said I was playing too much Skyrim when it came out, so they took the router with them to work every day. Good thing you don't need internet to play an offline single player game. My parents routinely took away my library card when I did something worth punishing, so I memorized it. When they caught on they refused to go to the library with me for the duration of my punishment, so I started volunteering at the library once a week so they had to take me. If I misbehaved in a car, my mom would lower the window and say that a bird would fly in if I'd continue to misbehave. I was not allowed to read unless it was specifically for school. When I was little, my mom's go-to punishment was to make me kneel on uncooked rice for about 15 minutes. Had to keep a straight back or else the time was increased. She did this because that was how her mom punished her and her brother. She eventually stopped using this punishment after she set some clear boundaries with my very controlling grandmother. She never felt right making me do it. My little sister never had to go through it. I kind of resented that for a while, but eventually was grateful she didn't experience it. Withheld dinner and I was only allowed to have bread and butter. My mother is a terrible cook so I was super okay with this. No punishment, and that in itself was punishment. I totally bombed during my first semester in college. I took 16 credits and ended up with a 0.77 GPA for the semester. Yes, less than 1.0. My parents were disappointed, but told me that they knew I could do better, and they knew I would do better. They forgave me and basically said, okay, so you screwed up, now make it better and make us proud. The fact that they were not upset really weighed on me. It really put a ton of guilt and shame upon me. Even though they didn't put those things on me, I did it to myself. It really motivated me to not D around any longer in college. I buckled down and really succeeded. Dad made me splice together his old 8mm vacation films into a Vine-style highlight reel after I hurt his feelings by refusing to see Chef with him. A little brother. I still don't know what I did wrong. Not really a strange punishment, but it turned out strangely I think. When I was probably 5 or 6, something happened, literally can't remember what I did to deserve the punishment, that caused my parents to send me to my room with no lights allowed on and the door closed. I'd never been able to sleep with the door closed and at least a light on in the hall or something till then. This time, I just went to sleep after a while in there with no lights, and that was the last time I needed lights on or the door open when I went to bed. Worked out well from my point of view. Emo. Edit. While this kinda blew up over the weekend, I should say that I grew up during the late 60s when spanking was just a normal thing too. I don't remember ever actually getting spanked though. I dunno. My parents were never cruel to us when we were children. In fact, maybe I was just sent to my room and I just didn't turn on the light myself. Goodness knows I could have. The switch was on the inside of my room. I might have just pouted on my bed till I fell asleep and realized later that I didn't have the light on. It was around 50 years ago or so. I remember that it happened, but I don't remember the specific circumstances. Forced to smell dog breath. Because if we have to deal with the filth from your mouth, then you have to deal with the filth from its mouth. I got this on numerous occasions. It sounds silly at first, but it was anything but at the time. I begged them to give me anything but that. I was always more the artist type. Didn't much care for throwing the football around or working on cars. I wasn't belittled or anything. My family let me do me. But my stepfather was an evil genius, and when I did something that was considered a minor infraction, he'd give me the option of either going to bed early or staying up till my normal bedtime but having to watch sports with him in the living room. And I couldn't just zone out or read. He'd sit there and make chit chat about the game or try explaining the rules or the player's stats or something else I couldn't have cared less about. I'm 34 and we still laugh about that sometimes. It was brutal. I got a bad grade on a math test in elementary school. As my dad dropped me off for the day, I quickly told him he needed to sign something, the test. He was so furious that even though I was already late for school, he drove the 2 miles back home, spanked me and made me walk to school. I was so late. I was deathly afraid of my basement, and the threat from not adhering to lights out time was being forced to sleep in the basements for the night. Anyway, I forget what I was doing, but I was up to no good one night. Probably reading comic books with a flashlight or something. I got sent to sleep in the basement and was pretty much up all night being super scared. It was threatened a lot, but I think it only actually happened once. When I was 16, I got caught shoplifting a CD. Thankfully they didn't press charges, but my father confiscated every possession I owned short of the essentials: mattress, blankets, clothes, and ironically, a $200 police scanner. Still in the box. He didn't know about. And that's how I got into listening to police scanners. Edit. Scanner was shoplifted as well, and I never shoplifted again after getting caught. My parents made me join my school's cross-country team because I quit the football team. They also made me join the basketball team and the debate team. I think they had like 3 ideas for punishment and just did all of them. One time when I was super young, I didn't eat all of the food on my plate. My dad told me I was gonna eat it or wear it. I was full and I said I'm not gonna eat it. Then my dad slammed my head into my plate of food. Death was a very strange punishment. They were mad I was playing too many video games. Civilization, Master of Iran I, World of Warcraft I, Final Fantasy I, 2, 3, Tactics, Go Battle, Urk 1 Masters. Okay, so I played lots of games. So they made me go out with friends more. Now keep in mind, I did have friends and was social and would go out once or twice a week with them. But any video games were bad, so my parents forced me to go hang out in my buddy's garage where they just drank and smoked up at 13 years old. A couple of them ended up getting into some serious drugs by around 16. And my parents still were forcing me to go hang out with them, because their parents were good people that will sort him out. Well, they never did. I always thought it was funny that they considered cerebral strategy games more damaging to my development than hanging out with 13-16-year-old drunks. I beat up a bully. My mom had a strong conversation with me, and then took me out for sushi. My dad's punishments were odd. If he caught me doing something I wasn't meant to, he wouldn't stop me from doing it. He'd make me do it more and more until I was sick of it. It worked quite well, tbh. Edit. So a lot of people seem to think I'm a guy. Sorry folks, I have a V. My mom always told me I would end up in prison. As punishment, she would make me sit in timeout under an office desk with a slat back chair turned upside down on top so the back covered the opening like bars. Come dinner time she fed me hard rolls and water because that's what they serve in prison. I found out years later, while not good food, prison food is much better than hard rolls and water. I got grounded a lot. That's not weird, but my mom refused to call it a grounding. She'd just give me a bunch of individual punishments that added up to a grounding, so can't leave the house, can't hang out with friends, can't play with most of my toys. But if I told someone I was grounded, she got upset. I think maybe the distinction she had in her head was that I was allowed to leave my room and talk to my family members, instead of being kept in my bedroom like her parents' version of grounding. When I was preparing for high school, I sucked at writing, particularly long response essay questions. To mediate this, my dad spent a week having me write a different essay every day of the most simple and mundane tasks. The one that really sticks out in my mind was the first one: how to put a football away. By doing this, though it seemed inhumane at the time, I learned how to expand a simple thought into highly descriptive details and became a great writer throughout the rest of my school career. My parents had an advertisement agency. They would also do preprint work. I don't know the English term for it, but they would do photo editing and magazine editing, ebooks for high schools and such. I was at 5th grade. I found out they were doing the color and photo editing for a Turkish porno magazine called Çikolata, and took it to school and monetized it. NBA collector cards, countless chocolate bars, Magic the Gathering cards, soccer cards were my main currency. I was the king among men. Then a cunt tried to get his cards back and threatened me to tell the headmaster. I tore one of his cards and said, if you tell them, I will mess the others too. He told on me. The ducker didn't see my bluff. I mean, I cut the cards just in spite. My punishment was to start working for my parents' company after school for 2 hours every day. I learned Photoshop, Corel, scanning old school photo films, learned the printing machine and such. I got good, so they made me work until 7th grade, until they divorced and sold the company. Their divorce was the best thing happened. The first thing that came to my mind was that Vine. But in reality, my mom once made me clean the yard by picking up each leaf one by one and walking all the way across the yard to put each one in a bag. I was 8. The crime, you ask? I had scared my dog on accident and the dog knocked over her water. Edit. I'm glad the penalty for my crime could be so entertaining. One time I forged my mom's signature on a school discipline warning thing. She made me write my own signature 500 times so I wouldn't write the wrong name again. My brother was caught shoplifting a kid. Mum found out I ditched mass at school, Catholic school, so she made me go to all 7 masses offered by my church that weekend. Total time over the weekend spent in church was like 10 hours. I had the gospel and the homily memorized. Sent me to their room. My room had a full-size color TV with cable, video games, and all my stuff. Their room had a bed and a tiny, black and white TV with an antenna that only got one channel and well, most boring night ever. Give me my dessert on top of the vegetables I didn't want to finish. The next time I made sure to finish my plate. Odd perhaps, but it worked. Suicide. My mother would attempt it if she didn't get her way. Was grounded so much in my life. I would say 3/5 of my first 16 years were grounded. Neighbor convinced my mom to take me to family counseling. When I sat down with him, he asked what my main complaint with them was. I said all of the grounding. So he came up with a list of rules, and if I break them, I get kicked out instead of being kept in, but not kicked out to go hang with my friends. So they put a tent up in the backyard, and when I broke a rule, I was banished to the tent for a predetermined amount of time. This didn't end up working out, because breaking curfew was 12 hours out in the tent. So I would start breaking curfew on purpose, go out to the tent, wait for my parent to go to sleep, and sneak out of the tent and go hang with my friends all night, until the night I came home to a dead patch of grass where the tent had been, and I had to sleep the night on the patio. I woke up to my next door neighbor staring at me through the fence, shaking his head. Safe to say, my parents went back to grounding me after that. Side note, the counselor we went to was later arrested for molesting children. Wasn't allowed to go trick-or-treating that year because I didn't lie to my babysitter about not having eaten breakfast that day. Told this story before and was called Satan. I basically raised my little brother. When he was in middle school, he was failing math. He would always forget to turn in assignments, refuse tutoring, and didn't study for quizzes. I told him if he failed I'd do something drastic. He failed on the year, so I deleted every save in his PS2. All of them. There were hundreds of hours of saved games. Never saw him cry so hard in my life. He passed summer school with a B. Edit. I am getting a lot of hate and will certainly get more in a minute, but here is more to the story. This was a year-long frustration. We would do homework together and he wouldn't hand it in and the teacher wouldn't accept it late. He refused to study. His pattern of behavior was out of control. For all the people saying I should have gave him blank memory cards and gave him the real ones later, he would have seen right through it. He is smart. No, I deleted those files in front of him. He needed to change his behavior and I had a real hard time disciplining him as his brother and not his parent. I hated how hard he cried. It felt horrible. There was no other way. I know it was cruel. When I was 5, my dad had this threat he would always use that went like putting us under the stream or something. I can't put it right in English words. I didn't understand what that meant until one night I just couldn't fall asleep, so I was there lying in bed, and when he came to check up on us, shared room with my 2 sisters, and saw me awake, he decided it was my fault and he had to punish me. So he dragged me to the bathroom and put my head under the running cold water tap until my hair was soaked, then sent me to bed like that. A while later, when he had presumably fallen asleep, my mom came, having heard the entire thing happen because I was obviously shouting at him to stop, and dried my hair, cursing him up and down. To this day I still don't understand what his logic was, and he laughs about it when I mention it. He always had it out for me during those years for some reason. And if you're wondering why my mom didn't stop him, my guess would be during that time housewives just didn't really go against their husbands for whatever reason. I don't hold it against her though. When I was 6, I did something stupid that angered my dad and I wasn't allowed to mention anything related to Pokemon for a month. If I got into fights with my brother sister, we had to stand nose to nose for an hour. Ugh. My mother used to lock me in the trunk of the car if I annoyed her. I'd spend about 8 hours at a time with her driving sealed away in there. Oof. Another one, it was my birthday and I didn't like the food my father made once as he puts chili in things knowing I am allergic to them. I refused to eat it for his amusement. He stormed upstairs and chucked my presents down. He stomped on them, ripped up all my birthday cards. I was about 11. My mum turned off the electricity instead of turning off the Wi-Fi when I was playing too much MC. I'm terrified of the dark and I was really scared that some monster was in the house. I screamed so loud we got noise complaints from both neighbors. Made me eat biscuits and gravy. I absolutely hated that food as a kid. My obese stepfather hated it. So often the punishment was having those for dinner. I often just didn't eat, which was fine by him. He got my portion. I had to write book reports on books of the Bible. I would have to read the book of the Bible, discuss the major themes, and explain how it related to my bad behavior. As a result, I really know my Bible and no longer believe in religion. I had to write 500,000 sentences once. I got about 1/3 of the way done and my dad noticed I was writing one word at a time down the list, because in my mind that was faster, and he made me start over. The funny part is, I can't remember what the sentence was or why I had to write them in the first place. When I was in the 7th grade I got a 2-day suspension for fighting. We were playing kickball and this one kid, Alexis, was being a real D with everyone, purposely trying to bean them as pitcher and running into them trying to knock them over when he was taking a base. I'm playing second base at one point and he runs into me like that, knocks me back. He was pretty fast so it was a hard hit, and I just lost it and got up and started throwing punches. The gym teacher came and broke us up right away and dragged us to the principal's office. I'm lucky that it wasn't now because I would have probably gotten expelled, but I got off with just 2 days of suspension. I explained to my parents why I was fighting and they understood I was just standing up to an asshole. It just so happened that my grandfather and aunt were visiting from Mexico during that time. That aunt is 7 years younger than me. My grandfather had another kid with his new wife in his 60s. And my parents decided that my punishment would be to babysit and play with her the 2 days I was out of school. I always found it funny that my punishment for fighting was being a babysitter so my dad and my grandpa could do more stuff without a hyper little kid around. My dad sent me to my room. No biggie, right? Well, that's until you hear why. Reason: I did my f***ing homework. He claims I was in his way and needed to get out for some exercise. But it was already overdue, so I couldn't. Although I think the only reason he acted this way is because of his mood swings that he gets from his PTSD. I love him, but his mental issues are a nightmare when in action. Mow the lawn with one of those ancient lawn mowers. It sucked. When I was ages 6-10, a typical punishment consisted of being made to wear a diaper and then treated like a baby for the rest of the day. Several times I was even sent to school wearing the diaper, and if anyone came over while this punishment was going on, I had to show them what I was wearing underneath my pants. I failed pay because I wouldn't dress out. My dad was so flabbergasted that I got no punishment. My parents believed in beatings, so it was strange. Coincidentally, that's when I joined marching band. Counted as pay credit. I flunked fluid mechanics twice in a row at university. My dad made me move 2 hours away from campus, was living next to campus, for the remainder of my undergraduate program. With 2 years left, had to take a 4-hour commute every single ducking day, and where I'm at, school starts at 6:30 AM. So I had to be leaving my place every day at 4:30 AM. I had one of those palate expander things that are used when your mouth is too crowded for all of your permanent teeth. Once or twice a day, you have to take a key and tighten the screw in the middle of this metal bar that sits across the roof of your mouth to slowly widen your upper jaw. Felt like a medieval torture device. You bet I would shape up real fast when my mom would threaten I'm gonna get the key. My mom made me eat a donut. I only ate half. I don't like donuts. It's something about the dough, and one morning in elementary I guess I was sassing off or something. But mom wouldn't let me eat anything else and told me I had to eat one glazed donut. So I sat at the table and picked at half the donut, and then found a book nearby and just ready for the next half hour. She came back into the room and realized I'd chosen the only logical option for a picky eater: starvation, and gave up on the punishment after a while. One friend asked why she didn't just let me starve until I was hungry enough. But that's a simple answer: I'd rather starve. And she got concerned when she realized how long I would go on juice boxes alone. My dad made me take apart a Super Cub aircraft engine and put it back together. My dad then got in the plane and flew to Boston. This was after I ducked up badly. He wanted to make the point that my actions had consequences, and that if I ducked up something like that again, someone I love could die. Dad didn't check the engine before he flew out. He looked me dead in the eye and said that I trust you. Every time you have to do something like this, my life is in your hands. Your mother and I trust you. Put the faith we have in you to work. You aren't a stupid kid. Act like it. That moment ducking terrified me for a second, but I knew I had done the job right. Not really a punishment, more of a life lesson, in my dad's style. I had abusive parents, so I was once grounded to my room with no TV, games, etc. for 3 months because I walked home from school with a neighbor. I was told I couldn't be around him after my parents forgot to pick me up. The punishment equals the crime wasn't the strange part, though. The strange part was that all I was allowed to have was books. And I'm an introvert who loves to read, so it wasn't even really a punishment. Was 14 yo. First time getting wasted. Like really wasted. Had 0.5L bottle of 80% alcohol. No memory of the night. Apparently 2 of my friends had carried me home and talked to my father, who had only asked whether I had anything besides alcohol. Next morning my parents made me breakfast in bed. No penalty, just a weirdly nice conversation about what went wrong. At the end my father just said, "I'm not gonna tell you to not drink. I know that doesn't work. All I want you to do is make better decisions in life," than I did, and left the room. Later that day we went shopping and they bought me a new snowboard. Weird,